Now, we have a lot of really great patriots on this show, and we've got James O'Keefe right now in the air. I'm talking to his head guy who's been exposing all the Democratic fraud. They have never, in the decade I've been interviewing him, had a real threat like this where they're actually getting ready to release a bunch of stuff they weren't going to release. They've given us the code keys to release the video that's even more damning than what you saw this week and last week. That was the top story in the country. The Democratic operatives publicly saying that they're already stealing the election and that they're going to take over the country. So that's coming up at the bottom of the hour. We're losing our freedoms right now. The internet's been handed over to the UN 17, 18 days ago. We have open calls for no-fly zones, which the chairman of the Joint Chiefs has said to Congress will cause a war with Russia. Got a Russian fleet coming in. Tony Shaffer, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, who ran the main operations to try to take out al-Qaeda, ordered to stand down twice, is probably the most important person out there who first exposed Benghazi 1 week after it happened. And believe me, he went through a lot to do that. They tried to put him in jail for exposing 9/11, but failed as well. And the fact that there were stand-downs there. All that's come out. Best-selling author of Operation Dark Heart. His new novel came out 3 years ago, The Last Line, because obviously he can't write something that's nonfiction about what's going to happen, but The Last Line is now happening. The Islamic invasion, the sellout to the caliphate. You want to know what's happening, read The Last Line. 3 years old, happening now. So Colonel Shaffer is our guest here. So much to cover, such an insane time to be alive. What do you want to tackle first?
Well, first off, Alex, thank you for what you're doing. I mean, it seems like every time we talk, we're talking about things you and I had predicted or forecast years ago. So, kudos for you and allowing me, way before the fact, a platform to talk about it. And secondly, thank you for what you're doing regarding continuing to hammer on the truth. And one thing we didn't talk about before, I was over in England 2 weeks ago. I was asked to come over to talk about Brexit, about what the implications are for Brexit. And let me tell you, there's some folks there who are fed up with the globalists as well. And so there's a real anti-feeling globally right now against this whole idea of a world government, no accountability, and the British led the way on that. So, I think the fact that you're now picking up the battle and just continuing it here the way you need to, I just appreciate being on with you and appreciate coming on and talk about stuff. What I'd like to begin with, I think, is just Syria, if you want. I think we should go through that a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, I agree with General Dunford. We have to understand, General Dunford being the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, we have to understand a no-fly zone at this point in time would do nothing to help secure the situation and would likely lead to another war. And let's remember that General Dunford, during his confirmation hearings a year and a half ago, said in front of the Senate and got pilloried for it that he felt our largest threat right now globally is not Islamic terror. It's actually the Russians, because they had both the capability to do real damage with nuclear weapons as well as compete with us in the world stage. So his words were, literally by the left kind of, he was basically made into a caricature over that issue. Well, we know that the Russians are expanding and they have clear designs on trying to reinsinuate themselves in places. So, but you have people like Hillary Clinton and others who really, I think, are looking to get us into the war because they are proposing these very antagonistic things, very dangerous things, which would indeed potentially get us into a shooting war with the Russians. And let me be clear for your audience. I don't believe for a minute that we're ready to go to war with Russia. I don't think they want to go to war with us. With that said, we are doing nothing to actually effectively counter their re-expansion into the world as a global superpower. And the way Hillary Clinton's proposing to do it, it would really simply put us in a position where we're not prepared to fight a war that we'd have to fight that would result in, I think, a great deal of bloodshed. So, for those of the kids who are living in their parents' basements right now based on the really bad economy created by President Obama and Hillary Clinton, they would be basically allowed to be trained to be in the military and go fight a war they'd probably die in. So, it's a good way of Hillary using the millennials in a way to get him to go to work, and I don't think it would be a good way to go to work.
Exactly. And then we had a week and a half ago, General Milley, the head of the Army, say this new war will be as big casualty-wise as World War II. I mean, this is just apocalyptic stuff we're hearing.
Right, General Milley's correct. I mean, I know General Milley. He is being completely accurate in his comments on the point. So we have to take a step back. Some of these things that are being proposed now may have worked before the Russians came in. Well, it's a completely different situation. And the other thing is this. There's been reports of the offensive in Mosul kicking off, and it is going as well as can be expected. I'm not saying it's going, swimmingly well. There's challenges. We now have 100,000 troops. Most of those are not ours. We're probably limited to we're probably at about between 10 and 15,000. Probably just about 15% of that force is U.S. fighting this effort. The Kurds, God bless them, our primary ally, doing a great job. The Iraqis doing a marginal job, as they have been. But there is progress being made to move ISIS out of Mosul. So I think we will, by January, have a pretty good understanding of how much of Iraq is back in the hands of the Iraqis or the proxies we support. Now, unfortunately, the proxies we don't support, the Iranians will also have a lot of influence in Iraq too. I'm not saying that Iraq's going to be a settled issue for no matter what. I'm just saying that Iraq will be, for better or for worse, out of the control of ISIS. But the bottom line, Alex, is no one has a plan for Syria, and the plans that have been put forth by Ms. Clinton on her side are really dangerous and really designed to do damage to our national security. She wants to continue this unabated import of Islamists, terror, like they did in Germany and France. And that policy is not only dangerous, it is guaranteed to see more U.S. citizens die. So
and of course, of course, Europe knows you bring 5 million in, or we bring in hundreds of thousands, there's going to be attacks. Then why are they doing it?
Well, the only answer I have is that knowing what's happened in Europe, and that would come here, she wants to knowingly import the problems we have in Europe. And the reason you would do that is because you can both be the provider of the crisis and the provider of the solution to the crisis. Of course, their solution, Alex, as you know, is more control. For whatever reason, she is bent on this idea of being in charge of everything. And by creating a crisis like that, creating the need to protect the American people, you then can protect the American people by more control, by more onerous DHS.
That's right, and then use it against the, quote, alt-right she admits doesn't have a right to exist. She openly says in emails to her constituents, she wants to shut me down by name. I have no right to be on the air. I mean, that is so totalitarian.
Right. And so literally, this is all the use of chaos and importing chaos. And I'm a political scientist. I know exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to create adverse circumstances that they then can come in and solve. This is a global version of the Munchausen by proxy treatment of psychosis. So basically, she's trying to be the parent who injures her own child for purposes of going in to be the hero. That's what they're doing, except their purpose long-term, Alex, is to basically create this global control, this global governance that everybody, where President Obama will go to the UN first before he goes to Congress. That's what she wants to do.
And when you watch somebody with Munchausen, I've seen it personally, they don't know it's obvious to everyone. They just keep doing it over and over again, and they can't stop.
Right. And I think this is where the psychosis of Ms. Clinton and the psychosis of the entire movement is I think most people who see it recognize it for what it is. Unfortunately, Alex, we have citizens who just have not woken up to the reality which we face.
And by the way, Colonel Shaffer, obviously you're heavily involved in psychological warfare, studying all that to be able to battle al-Qaeda successfully. When I look at the sycophants around Hillary and the fawning, it's worse than schoolgirls around Elvis Presley. It's cult-like watching North Koreans around Kim Jong-un. It's very shameful. How did we get to this point of having a national press confirmed being run by the Democratic Party?
Well, I think two ways. First, while people on the conservative side are off trying to actually do good things, I just came out of a meeting with some folks from the Reagan White House, someone who was very senior and close to President Reagan. We're all trying to defend the country, and it seems to me that both through institutions of higher learning and the media, the folks on the left seem to gravitate to, and I think there's a real ethical problem. People on the left, what I've seen, have no problem just simply making stuff up out of whole cloth. And for those who follow me on Facebook, I am constantly showing the hypocrisy.
Let's talk about your Facebook. It's amazing. I'm on there all the time. But exactly, they're waging war against reality. They don't follow any rules, and it's all a big con game. Please continue.
And that's your point. It's like they've kind of figured out this Ponzi scheme, if you will, of truth, where they try to basically obtain control and influence, and then when they get it, they use it politically for their own self enrichment. And I think this is why you see this complete diminution of accountability from the media, because they look at this as a means to an end, and their end being a political construct where you have essentially a government which is the thing controlling most things. And I think it's totally dangerous and insane.
Totally dangerous and insane. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You gonna sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you gonna be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.